Hi, I'm Rick Reef. Welcome to SoCal Insider. Well, so far so good for California in this new year. Jobs up, unemployment down, homes selling, new homes being built, and the strongest state budget in years. So is it time to celebrate? Well, not so fast. According to Professor Tom Campbell, who used to be the state's finance director, as well as a congressman and Berkeley's business dean and now Chapman University's law dean, he says the state's not dealing with some of its biggest problems, like water supply, the working poor, and public employee IOUs. Well, we'll hear from the professor. But first, a showdown over prisons. As part of his new budget, Governor Brown is pouring hundreds of millions of dollars into new jail construction in Southern California and the rest of the state. Many favor that spending, but some definitely do not. David Nazar, what's the story?
Rick, the Board of State and Community Corrections has just awarded $500 million to various counties. Los Angeles had gotten about $100 million to build a new women's jail facility, and Orange County is slated to get $80 million to expand Music Jail in Irvine, for example. Essentially, with the state finally having some additional tax revenue, the governor is sort of saying we've got to spend some of those dollars to add prison beds and ensure that more criminals serve out their sentences. Now, as you know, Rick, the state is under court orders to reduce the terrible problem of prison overcrowding. And, well, its current answer, so-called prisoner realignment, transferring some prisoners to local jails and releasing others early. And, of course, it has plenty of critics. And as I found out on a visit to Linwood, obviously not everyone believes the right answer is to put more people behind bars. Dozens of activists demonstrate in front of the Linwood Women's Jail to protest $500 million that's just been awarded to law enforcement for the construction and expansion of jail facilities.
No more jails! No more jails! No more jails!
These protesters are part of a statewide organization called CURB, Californians United for a Responsible Budget. The rally is staged about an hour before the Board of State and Community Corrections convenes for a meeting here at the Linwood Jail to formalize which counties will be given the millions to construct their new facilities. It's standing room only at the meeting, as the room is packed with local and state law enforcement officers, community officials, and various stakeholders, some of whom are making a plea for money to build their new jails, and others like CURB officials who are pleading with the board to not allocate the $500 million to build jails. Diana Zuniga is CURB's statewide organizer.
We believe that the money that is being funneled into the jail system, into constructing jails, could be redirected to other re-entry services, alternatives to incarceration.
Alternatives, Zuniga says, for things like schools, hospitals, youth centers, job centers, and general community improvements, and most importantly,
funnel more money into mental health services, since we know that around 50 to 60% of the community that is incarcerated, especially in Los Angeles County jails, are from the mental health community. We are also asking to funnel more money into substance abuse treatment, since we know that is another majority of the population that's inside, to create a program for women that have children to serve their time in their home or in a community facility with their child instead of the child being torn away from them.
That's what happened to Kelly Flor Delgado's sister, Cindy. Cindy, who's in her early 20s, was driving under the influence last year with her little 5-month-old baby in the car. Cops arrested and booked Cindy.
Upon her arrest, her 5-month baby was with her. She was placed into the Linwood facility, this one, and her 5-month baby was put into foster care. Her mental state was not okay. She was very paranoid because her baby was put into foster care and nobody knew where her baby was. But because we knew that there is community-based solutions, and we do believe in community-based solutions, along with some community members, we fought to get her into a rehab center so that she can complete her time there with her daughter instead of her completing her time at a jail.
Delgado is joining in today's CURB protest at the Linwood Jail. She also wants to beg the BSCC board not to slate funds for more jail beds.
I am angry at the way that they're trying to build more jails. I do not believe that jails are the solutions. I think they are alternative solutions, and that the money being invested into jails should be invested into communities.
In all fairness, your sister did break the law. She was driving under the influence with her 5-month-old baby in the car. What should have happened had she not gone to jail?
Probably gone into, I don't know, gotten some assistance, maybe go to AA meetings or something like that. I honestly believe that should she have been Caucasian and wealthy, she would have not been trialed the way she was trialed.
Michael Richardson agrees with Delgado. Richardson is the executive director of a Los Angeles nonprofit that tries to create opportunities for young people living in places like Linwood and Compton and South Central. Richardson says race plays a huge role with regards to who gets incarcerated.
The numbers speak for themselves. You know, here in LA County, the blacks are 9.5% of the population, but yet here we're 27% of the total prison population, right? The type of crimes that they're arrested for, the sentences, right? And look at the disparity in sentences from white to blacks, right? So you know, we can say that, you know, there is racism here, right? Just by the sentencing structure, the type of crimes that the people of color are going to jail for.
Linda Penner is with the Board of State and Community Corrections. Penner says she takes issue with the way Curb and others are categorizing the $500 million for jail construction.
The board just adopted recommendations for the first $500 million to go towards certainly addition of beds, but beds with the primary purpose for treatment and rehabilitation. And so I think that's an important emphasis. Certainly people are in custody for a long period of time. We're trying to make that time meaningful. So as they transition back out into the community, they have some alternatives.
You talk about the fact that these are going to be beds and also beds for treatment, yet folks with Curb and other activists against this feel that any jail bed is the wrong thing to do.
You know, California has taken on the largest transition of prisoners out of a prison system to a local system in the nation. And with that comes obligations for locals' infrastructures. I support these beds. I think that the infrastructure had serious issues when we took on realignment, and the administration has responded to those by allowing this, but asking for an emphasis on treatment and programming.
Let's make a difference in these people's lives. Let's change it. And then in programming, not only with those people coming home, we have to do programming with those young kids to keep them out of the system, right? That's the bigger issue. Put money in rehabilitation, in mentoring programs, and we can change this process.
Now, the money the Board of State and Community Corrections has approved is going to 15 counties throughout the state. Orange County, as I mentioned, is getting $80 million. Sacramento County is getting $56.5 million. Santa Barbara County gets almost $40 million. And Rick, Little Santa Cruz County is getting almost $25 million.
You know, David, I think Curb is making a point that a lot of people could agree with, which is that too many people are in jail. And let's talk about how to address it. Certainly, if we have a more rational approach to the war on drugs and maybe decriminalize marijuana, we can get some people that are serving time now out of jails, and that's something that we should be talking about. But I'll tell you, Curb is not doing itself any favors when it starts bringing up race. You know, I'm sorry that Cindy was traumatized because she got separated from her daughter. She's drunk, she's driving with a baby. I'm glad now that she's apparently in rehab and reunited with her daughter. But the fact that she had to cool her heels for a night in jail and her daughter was her child was taken away from her for safekeeping for a while, I think that's good. And I don't, you know, a Caucasian woman doing the same thing, regardless of her income, should have also been in that situation. But to try to make this about race, David, I'm sorry, they're barking up the wrong tree there.
No, I agree with you. Here's the point, because when I did that interview, I had a very tough time because the sister, Kelly Flor Delgado, was a sweet young gal. Obviously, she loves her sister, wanted the best for her. I have no sympathy. I have zero tolerance. I don't care what creed or color you are for anybody that drives drunk. She's not putting her own life at risk, her baby's life at risk, but the rights of everybody on that street. So that I have no patience for. I am going to say one thing. You know, I've covered these stories for years, Rick, and I was a court reporter for many years back in the day. There is sometimes a bit of a disparity between sentences handed down to white folks and people of color. The sister did spend a month behind bars. I have seen I have witnessed in court where women in similar situations who were white and had money did not go into jail for a month. So I don't want to discredit Kelly Flor Delgado completely. Like I said, I have no tolerance, zero tolerance for anyone who drives under the influence, and especially with a baby in the car. But she has somewhat of a legitimate point. If you follow the court system for years, as I did, there does seem to be a disparity. And sometimes it's not about black or brown or white. It's about green, man. That's what it's about. You have money, you get the best lawyers, you get the best sentences.
Okay, well, again, that's only tangentially related, I think, to this whole issue of what do we do right now with prison overcrowding. We do have a big problem, and most of the solutions that are other than increasing jail capacity involve long-term solutions or a whole rethinking of how we jail people, and it's more problematic, I think. And so I think right now we've got to add some jail capacity. Now, one thing I was wondering about, David, in Irvine, one of the proposals is expand Music Jail, and people in Irvine don't want that. I know neighborhood opposition here in Linwood to this. Is some of this neighborhood opposition under the guise of criminal justice for folks?
Well, of course it is. I mean, there are a multitude of folks and neighbors and average residents and citizens who say, not in my backyard, I don't want a jail, 1,000 feet from my home. Of course that plays into this. However, there are countless activists and opponents of jails all throughout the state of California. We saw this on the ballot when folks voted for treatment programs, who vehemently disagree with having any more jails built. They do believe that treatment programs and mental health help centers and just improving the community is the way that we're going to combat this problem. So, but yes, are there folks who don't want a jail because they're just in that neighborhood? Obviously, that's part of the case.
Okay, and David, as I understand it, there's actually two programs that the governor is pushing. One is this $500 million or so for that you're talking about. Those are for jails, local jails,
right?
Because, as you say, a lot of state prisoners have been pushed to the local level. So he's giving money to accommodate these local jail needs. And then his other program is to build more state prisons or to increase state capacity. That's a whole separate program. And there he's even talking about possibly privatizing and sending people out of state to privately out of state prisons, or building new prisons in California that would be privately run.
Yeah, but again, remember the differentiation. It's jails versus prisons, and that's again where you get the opponents who say, well, you're privatizing this as a huge money-making industry. There are going to be no bid contracts, corruption, more than there is now. And if you ever were going to pack a jail cell full of people, well, now's the time to do it when it's privatized and they're making the money. So it's a very tricky situation if you privatize this.
David, I think you're giving probably the public employee perspective on that one. I think we have lots of corruption right now. I'm not sure privatizing it. I know one thing privatizing would do is lower the cost of what it takes to imprison
I said
people.
you're going to have more corruption, believe me.
Yeah, I think that's an open question. You might have less, but anyway. Thank you, David. Good report. And now, joining me to discuss California's finances and its future, the good, the bad, and the ugly, former Silicon Valley Congressman, former State Finance Director, former UC Berkeley Business Dean, and now Law Dean at Chapman University in Orange, Tom Campbell. Welcome back, Tom.
Thanks, Rick. Happy to be back.
I think the last time you were here, you're running for the state Senate, or for the U.S. Senate. You were running for governor. Are you done running?
I'm done running. I'm the dean of a wonderful law school, and we're trying to create opportunities for great lawyers to help businesses recreate economic opportunities.
Fantastic.
So that's a great goal to have.
And now you can expound on the issues of the day and not worry you're going to lose votes doing it,
Well,
right?
I kind of always did expound, and I lost votes by doing so.
Okay.
I did both.
Okay, great. Before we get into the state, any comment about this story we just did on prisons?
Yeah, first of all, David and you are both absolutely right. Driving when drunk, you're a killer. It's the grace of God that there wasn't a child crossing in a crosswalk when you were driving drunk. Period, end. Okay? Let's get that clear no matter what else we talk about. Second, what's the idea of putting people in jails or prisons for? You've got to think, if you could, at lower cost and better result, keep them in the neighborhood with, let's say, electronic monitoring, why then would you put them in jail? Because they've broken the conditions of monitoring in the past, or because they're violent. May I say once again, driving when drunk is violent. You're a killer. It's just potential, but you could just as well be. So if you begin to look at things that way, lower the cost and have better chance of rehabilitation if you predominantly focus on prison and jail for those who have broken conditions of parole or who are violent. And then one thing else you mentioned just a few minutes ago, Look at the whole drug law situation. Look at the program on drugs. When I was in the Congress, the number, and I haven't checked it since, but the number including jails and state imprisonment for California was just at 50% drug-related, 50% drug-related. So if you're committing a violent crime, that's something else again. But if your crime is you were caught possession because you're hooked.
Yeah, how many of the people, because some of the counter arguments is, hey, you know, drugs is part of the thing, but these are bad apples and, you know, that they're doing more than... Yeah. How many are the folks that are just kind of users and need help and aren't otherwise criminal?
I got two answers on that, depending on who you talk with. First of all, if you look at the statistics of what the person was put in jail for, a substantial amount, a very high percentage, are not related to kingpin kind of activities. But then the prosecutors will tell you that's because we pled them down. That's because they're really bad, but we could get them to plea to this, so it makes the statistics unreliable. So I'd simply put it this way. If you can get somebody who is addicted to a substance to get off that addiction, and you use what we might call harm reduction methods to do so, you'll be 10 times better.
Okay, let's get to the budget. This is a much better budget for the state.
Oh, yeah.
And so kind of explain it to us. You have a way of doing it, comparing it to a mortgage. Tell us so that folks can understand what's this new state budget that the governor has proposed all about.
Well, I'll start with one phrase, that's capital gains. So let us, and the governor recognizes this, to his credit. The state budget is in balance because the stock market is up. And so people sell their stock and capital gains come in. Since we
to the state.
To the state of California.
Like these these IPOs, right?
IPOs,
Facebook and whatever else.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think 1 year Google accounted for like 25% of the revenue of the state of California. Now, I'm not sure of my number, but it's pretty high. The point is, first of all, start with the fact that the revenue increase is one time. It is not something to rely on. Point two, governor deserves a lot of credit that he didn't build in new entitlements. That was a great risk. And the legislature is still to be heard from, right?
Yeah, yeah.
With 2/3 of both houses in the Democratic column, we'll see what they come up with. Point three, he did not address. So I'm starting with giving him credit. I want to be clear on that. But what he didn't address, in a $107 billion budget, how much should we be putting aside for the obligations for retirement of state employees and teachers, and for their health care that we're not reserving. And that's where I use my mortgage analogy.
Right, and he's not addressing that. He's
Zero.
not really doing
Zero.
All right, so what should he do about it? What are your thoughts?
You should begin to pay down the mortgage. So the mortgage is $273 billion of unfunded public employee retirement and health care, $273 billion. So I said, suppose you had a $273,000 mortgage on a home. How much would you have to be paying each month? It comes about to $900, so roughly $12,000 a year. Now add the zeros, and that's how much we should be putting aside.
And how much is that?
$12 billion a year.
A year.
And we're putting zero aside for that. So other possible remedies will come along, but what the governor said in his budget was, we'll get the stakeholders together and we'll get them working towards a solution. Well, he admits there's a problem, but he didn't really give us much leadership. I'd settle for 1/2 of that accrual, and then maybe put the rest on present employees'
But right now,
contributions.
nothing's being done on that.
Right now, nothing's being done.
What's the likelihood?
Well,
What's the likelihood anything will be done?
I think there is a decent likelihood, and the reason is that we will hit the baby boomers wave very, very soon. It's actually just beginning now. State employees and teachers who are going to be drawing down more than the funds are available in
because
Cal
they'll be
STIRS.
retiring.
Because they're retiring, yeah. So the Cal State Teachers Retirement System, called Cal STIRS, or Public Employee Retirement System. As a result, that's going to hit the state's budget, and we're going to have to put the money in real time. If we had a little bit more farsightedness, we would have been building up that reserve.
Yeah.
So it'll hit.
Okay, but it's going to hit probably a little more pain.
It'll be, and also all the interest that we have to pay if we keep postponing it.
What is the possibility, you alluded to it, that the legislature, the Democrat, Jerry Brown's fellow Democrats, might not really like? They'd like to spend more money. What's the likelihood of a 2/3 override of if they do something that Jerry Brown doesn't like and he vetoes it? What do you think the chances are we're going to see a 2/3 override of the governor?
I think it's unlikely, and the reason is it's the same political party. So you got a team mentality in Sacramento in large part. And I repeat my praise for the governor that he did not go as far as some of his more liberal advisors wanted him to. But the legislature is going to think long and hard before they embarrass and undercut the governor of their own party.
Okay.
Technically they could because it's a 2/3 and they have 2/3.
Okay. The big challenges facing the state, what would you put at the top of the list?
Water.
And water.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's amazing, Rick. Just in ballpark numbers, about 170 million acre feet fall in rain and snow, and this year is going to be much, much lower than that. Going to be at least 30% less than that. And then out of that, you get about 73 that's available for distribution, because the rest goes to groundwater recharge and plants that are on the natural. Okay, of that 72, did you know 26 million acre feet of that 72 flows to the Pacific Ocean? It's amazing.
And so the issue is, how do we capture
How do we
that?
store it? Yeah.
And the governor's got a plan.
Well, I don't think it's enough, but let's say that when you ask what is the #1 issue right now, it's got to be infrastructure and particularly water.
Well, doesn't he have like a $25 billion plan? Of course, it faces all sorts of hurdles.
He does, and he's got what we used to call a peripheral canal before that phrase became politically toxic. And it's good as far as it goes, but the key is storage. It's not simply redistribution. He wants redistribution around the Sacramento Delta. You have to store water that would otherwise flow off into the Pacific. And the numbers, I said 26 million acre feet flows off into the Pacific. Just to put in that context, 20 million acre feet goes to agriculture. 20 million goes to agriculture. 26 flows into the Pacific. 20 goes into wild and scenic rivers. And
how much gets down to Southern California for people to drink?
Very, very little. 6 million acre feet go to cities throughout the state.
The governor is sticking with the bullet train. What do you think of that?
I think it's time to say no. And let me be candid, I supported it at the start. Quentin Kopp was the first chairman, and he was a state senator with me, and I admire him. And Tom Umberg I admire, and they're good people. But we were told that it was going to be some cost, about 1/3 of what it now turns out to be.
A lot of talk about taxes and regulations in California.
Yeah.
Taxes are too high, regulations too onerous on business. Do you agree?
I totally do. And one of the best pieces of evidence of that is how Texas is attempting to take our jobs away. Rick Perry coming on radio telling Californians, come to Texas because we won't overregulate you.
But the governor says the numbers show that we are creating jobs now, and that that was a momentary thing.
Oh, that's not true. Here's a very good example. Momentary. I've got to smile if it weren't so sad.
Do it in 20 seconds if you can.
CEO magazine every year rates every state #1 open for business, #50 least open for business because of regulatory burden. We have been #50 CEO magazine 8 years in a row.
And Texas has been up near the top.
#1 or 2.
Okay, very good. Tom, great talking to you as always.
A pleasure,
Thanks
Rick.
for coming on.
My joy.
You can watch this show and past shows at rickreef.com. Segments of the show can also be viewed at pbssocal.org. My guest has been Tom Campbell. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again on SoCal Insider.
SoCal Insider with Rick Reef is brought to you by the following. 5 Point Communities is a proud sponsor of PBS SoCal. 5 Point Communities is an independent real estate development company with assets under management across California. More information available at www.fivepointcommunities.com. Snell & Wilmer is a full-service business law firm with more than 400 attorneys in Orange County, Los Angeles, and throughout the West. On the web at swlaw.com. Snell & Wilmer. Straight talk, sound counsel. Practical solutions.
Relief Pod's latest generation of safety kits now go everywhere you go. Relief Pod's organized, color-coded, and compact safety kits keep first aid and emergency items accessible for a safe lifestyle every day. Relief Pod. Live ready.
A healthy future for you, your family, and your business is why Memorial Care Health System transformed healthcare. Our hospitals, physicians, and outpatient centers keep patients healthy and care for them when they're not. Memorial Care, one healthcare system leading the way.
Stem cells are showing great promise for the treatment of disease and injury. At UC Irvine, innovations in stem cell research are rapidly moving potential therapies from the lab to the patient.